Hello, my name is Joanna, and I'm an art and technology student at Saxion University of Applied Sciences. This is my justification for the project Creative Technologies. In this project, I had to work with a technology with which I have had no prior experience and try to create something innovative with it. I had to choose between several provided technologies, from which I decided to go with a JavaScript library called Three.js. Three.js is a JavaScript library that allows you to create 2D and 3D models in your browser without having to go through WebGL. The website has a very thorough documentation and a lot of examples of already made projects and their source codes. We start by downloading the Three.js library that we would need to add to our HTML in order for it to work. The first thing we need to do when we start a new project is create a scene, add a camera, and the renderer. Later on, you will have to create your own local server in order for your program to run smoothly. Voxel Painter is an online tool that lets users create pixel art on a grid-like canvas, essentially a 3D plane. This reminds me of music sequencers which allow a step-like arrangement of various samples and sounds. This is where I got the inspiration for my project. I decided to try and recreate the set sequencers based on the framework of Voxel Painter. The cubes are triggered by a marker that loops along the x-axis. This allows users to create basic rhythmic patterns. In addition, I have incorporated the possibility of adding your own sounds or samples to the JavaScript framework. This allows for more interesting and complex creations. The user is presented with the same grid as in Voxel Painter. On it, he or she can add cubes, which represent the sounds. The cubes have different textures so that they are recognizable, and the users can add as many cubes as they like. The original grid had a rather large size, which proved to be confusing to the users upon implementing my concept. As such, I decided to increase the size of the working field but reduce the visible part of the grid. I limited the grid to 10 by 10, however the users can enlarge the work field by simply scrolling along the x-axis. Although they are not visible, this reveals additional spaces on which cubes can be placed. During testing, this proved to work as users quickly got accustomed to the workflow. The program is composed of three main parts, the first being the init function. Inside of it, all the variables required for the program to run are initialized and ready to run. We store the new scene, camera setup, colors, geometry, and different functionalities that are specified later in the code. Afterwards is the update function. It is an endless loop that is the main logic of the program. It also calls the renderer. In addition, it calculates the delta time. This is the time that has passed since the last update loop. The reason I did this is because the program's calculations were too fast, usually lasting a few milliseconds. Progressing the melody using only this metric would have produced uncomfortably fast music. As such, I had to limit it from about 500 times a second to about 10 times a second for a more comprehensive pace. Lastly, we have the renderer. This component initializes the scene and draws all the assets in it, such as the camera and subsequently the blocks when they are placed. The sounds are synchronized with the cubes and their textures as well as their position on the grid. The different sounds and textures can be switched with specific buttons on the keyboard. To play an audio file, one mandatory constructor is the audio listener. It is a listener for all audio effects, positional or non-positional. It must be added once, after which we have a sound variable that we can see in the loader. There must be a trigger interaction from the user to set it off, so I used onDocument mouse down event function. In the final version of the program, I created an external file responsible solely for the playback of the sounds, which is later called as a class in the onDocument mouse down function. In conclusion, this was a very challenging but interesting endeavor. It helped me acquire a better understanding of programming in general, and specifically JavaScript. What I would have improved on if I had more time would be implementing audio effects and possibly spatial audio. In addition, I would have liked to make the environment more appealing, as well as visualize the grid in a more intuitive way that would not overwhelm users. Overall, I feel like I could have achieved more. However, seeing as this is a technology with which I had rarely worked before, I am satisfied with my accomplishments and enjoyed working on this project.